Wow, what a catch! LBW, first ball.
Tremendous catch, tumbling forward.
And he's bowled.
From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Daniel Norcross in a cold, miserable October day. The season of mists and mellow fruitfulness is upon us. The summer is now a distant memory and all that's left is leaf mulch and re-watching videos of Ben Stokes.
Over to India. I'm in New Delhi. I'm Charu Sharma. It's a wonderful, sorry about this, Daniel, sunny October day here in India. And I'm at the wonderful BBC studios in New Delhi. Always very well appointed, of course, very hospitable as well. And although I'm running around the countryside on our Pro Kabaddi League, which, of course, is another matter altogether, but there are lots of smiles in our part of the world because the Indians seem to have more than the measure of South Africa.
And I'm Brittany Carter from the ABC in Sydney, where, Daniel, I'm sorry as well, the sun is out and it's 25 degrees and the cricket is finally back on Australian shores. I've been loving watching the national women's team kill it the last 5 days, but we'll talk about that more as the show goes on, I'm sure.
Brittany, well, thank you ever so much, both of you, for gloating, but only a little. I will live vicariously through the warmth in your respective countries. And a warm welcome to you both. Brittany, we are both making our Stumped debuts, which does feel somewhat reckless on the part of the selectors. It's a little bit... It's a little bit Peter Hanscom, is it, and Matt Renshaw when they were first brought together in the same Test match?
Yeah, and I feel compelled to welcome you both as, a bit of a veteran on Stumped, but it's wonderful to have you both. Sorry about the weather, Daniel, but here we are.
Well, one gets used to it. It's just 6 months, gird our loins, and before you know it, it'll be April. That's the way to think about it. Now, Brittany, I want to start the show in your part of the world because it's been another quite extraordinary week for the Australian women's team. They completed a 3-0 2020 sweep of Sri Lanka, thanks in no small part to this woman.
For the record, Kanchana bowls to her. She goes straight. She goes long. It's 6. What a way to bring up the record. Elisa Healy's on 139. And this crowd here at North Sydney Oval are watching something very unique.
Yes, that was indeed Alyssa Healy scoring a world record 148 not out for Australia at the North Sydney Oval on Wednesday. She hit 19 fours, 7 sixes along the way. Brittany, astonishing stuff in your home city, but I gather you were otherwise engaged.
Yeah, I picked the wrong day to not be at North Sydney, Dan. I was calling a men's one-day cup game between New South Wales and Western Australia at the time, and we were watching on the app updates as Elisa Healy just absolutely swung her bat at ball and hit many boundaries. But this is her speaking after the match.
Yeah, it's obviously extra special today, but more pumped that we got the 3-0 series win. But I guess, yeah, things came off all right today, and I'm pretty pleased with that.
You looked in pretty good touch in the first 2 games and couldn't quite convert. Did that make today especially pleasing for you?
Yeah, I guess so. I think I didn't change my mindset at all coming into this series. I was going to go out there and try and get the team off to a good start, and some days it comes off and some days it doesn't. So I feel like I did my job in the first 2 games, but just couldn't quite, I guess, capitalise on the start. So I guess today was extra special. It's just one of those days where everything seems to come off all right.
You had the previous world record holder at the other end of it. You were getting close to the milestone. Was there any conversation about how that might work?
Yeah, there was a bit of banter. I said, I'm coming for you, Meg, at some point when it came up on the big screen. And look, fortunately for me, she did say at the end if it was in her zone, she was going to go for it. Otherwise, she was going to get a single. So it was nice team play there from Meg, and that's why she's skipper.
That's Australia's world record-breaking opener, Alyssa Healy. And, Charu, I want to bring you in here because this is getting a little concerning, isn't it? This Australian domination. Ever since Australia lost to India in that World Cup semi-final back in 2017, they've not lost a single series in any form of the game. They thrashed England in the recent Ashes, 12 points to 4. They've swept the West Indies 3-0 in an ODI and T20 series. They've just whitewashed Sri Lanka. Is this becoming a problem for women's cricket, that the domination of Australia is so intense, the gap between them and every other country is just getting wider and wider?
you say domination, yes. And sometimes it's not too bad because it spurs other nations towards a common, I can't use the word enemy, can I? But, a common goal. And, in many ways, this happened to the Australian men's team as well. They were unbeatable for such large amounts of time. But that didn't quite kill the game on the men's side, did it? So why, though, is more important. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's professional in Australia. The Women's Big Bash is making such a big difference, particularly, of course, to the white ball game, because there's so many young women, and of course, they're all generally athletic and outdoors anyway, who now sense a living in the game and lots of recognition, what have you. So I think that has been a major reason why the Australian women continue to be just better and better compared to the rest of the world. But I think the world will catch up. The Indian women certainly are doing a lot now. The English are just a notch behind. The West Indians, remember, won the T20 World Cup some time back. So I don't think they're that far ahead. But it's sometimes good to have a team dominating because the rest can then band together and go for it.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Next on Stumped, to Afghanistan, who have appointed former South Africa all-rounder Lance Klusener as the team's new head coach. Klusener played 49 tests and 171 ODIs for South Africa and was player of the tournament in the 1999 World Cup. As a coach, he won the T20 Ram Slam with the Dolphins franchise in 2013-14 and has worked as batting coach for Zimbabwe and South Africa. He replaces Phil Simmons, who stepped down in July after Afghanistan failed to win a single match at the World Cup. Well, earlier this week, I had a chat with Klusener, and he told me what attracted him to the Afghanistan role.
Talent. Get out of bed in the morning wanting to work with the best talent out there. So, yeah, one thing. And then a nice opportunity. Probably for me, one of the hottest teams in Asia right now. So that's good. And yeah, I've been watching them for a while. Played a lot against them when I was with Zimbabwe. So just a whole round package. I think there's a nice opportunity there, not just for them, but for me as well.
You talked there about their talent. How good is the board currently at identifying talent out there?
Look, I mean, let's be honest, their first-class system is not great. So their feeder system, as we know it, is probably not great. But, a lot of these guys grow up on playing cricket in the streets with softball. And, I think that's why we get a lot of spin out there. So that's a good thing. But, they're making every effort to make sure that their talent is good. They're under 19 and we pretty solid. Got a number of players. Majib just pops to mind that's come out of under 19. And then, Andy Moles has been, working there for a while, I think 5 years or so. He's currently in charge of their high performance and the head of selectors. So that's good as well in terms of getting people through the system. It does need work, of course it does. But for now, what they're achieving and their system back home is phenomenal.
Now, there's been a fair bit of turmoil in the past in Afghan cricket. Just on the eve of the World Cup, of course, they changed their captain against the will of the coach, Phil Simmons, as we understand it. Have you had assurances that you're sort of in control of the selection process and who's going to captain and whatnot?
Yeah, look, I mean, it seems, as I said, Andy Moles is in charge of the selection and, the high performance. So that's in place. A new captain in Rashid Khan. So yes, there are challenges, I'm sure, and there's new systems in place, which will also provide challenges. But I have been impressed with, the way that, their thoughts about where they want to go and what they want to be like and, where they'd like to be in the next couple of years. So that's good. They, and I guess for now, spending money in the right places. I think it's important in coaching and making sure under 19 is taken care of. They've got a wonderful facility in India. So yeah, they're making all the right noises, but I guess only time will tell.
Now, England, it looks, might very well be about to be on the verge of appointing Gary Kirsten as their coach, a man you'll know very well.
Yeah.
Can you give us an idea of what he might bring to English cricket?
Look, Gary's won the World Cup. I mean, he's the right man for the job, in my opinion. What is he going to bring? Loads and loads of experience. He brings winning. He brings experience in playing. He brings experience in coaching the big T20 leagues around the world, and he brings winning. So that for me is vitally important. He brings winning on and off the field. He brings good experience, and also he's one of those guys that when he does stand up and speak, people tend to listen, and he's had that ability, since I used to play with him. Trevor
Bayliss has been renowned, the departing coach, for having a very sort of laid-back style. and sort of helping to create an atmosphere, foster an atmosphere in which people can grow, but not necessarily be quite so hands-on, I guess, in his coaching style. Is Gary in that kind of mould, or is he more in an Andy Flower mould? I know it's not an either-or, but in on the spectrum, so to speak.
No, he's more laid back. He'll probably be exactly the same as what Trevor was doing. I mean, that worked fantastically well, and Gary's in that exact same mode.
That's Lance Klusener, the new head coach of Afghanistan. We'll address the challenge facing Klusener in a moment, but first, Gary Kirsten, seemingly the hot favourite to be England's new head coach. Charu, Kirsten took South Africa to number 1 in the Test rankings, won the 50-over World Cup with India in 2011. Most recently, he's had a pretty disastrous spell in charge of the Royal Challengers Bangalore in the IPL. How highly do you rate him?
Well, he'll be very disappointed you mentioned that RCB stint because that hasn't gone too well. But, in India, of course, he excelled. And no wonder they called him Guru Gary or whatever, because he did really well with the Indian team. And, Lance had a few important sort of aspects to Gary Kirsten's coaching style. And I think he's not a man of too many words. He lets teams be. I think he was a hot favourite with the Indians because he was truly more like just one of the players. He wasn't bossing anyone. And I think that works with international cricketers these days because all of them are such big heroes anyway and such big performers on the global stage. So I don't think this is a very difficult assignment to look after a national team because you do have the very best in the land.
50 candidates applied for the position, according to the Afghan Cricket Board. 50, that's an enormous number. What should his realistic targets be? Charu, let's start with you there. And I'm thinking really in terms of, they didn't win a game in this year's World Cup, but they hinted they had promise. They very nearly beat India, of course, didn't they, at Southampton?
Situational awareness. That's what's missing from Afghanistan cricket. And I feel like a bit of an Afghan specialist, having done their Afghan Premier League last time around. Of course, I'm very fond of the team. And he mentioned a few key words as well. They play with a lot of heart. They're fearless. They're extremely talented. But where I am a little apprehensive is just the way Afghanistan cricket is going to be managed. And I mean no open disrespect, but it does seem to be that the more the attention on Afghanistan cricket, the more the commerce perhaps that comes in through the ICC and various other sponsors, it has to be managed well in terms of their, the management, not the players. They are a wonderful bunch of people. Also, in terms of junior development, there's very little going on, I think, at this point of time. So you have a very talented bunch of people, but if they start retiring, Afghanistan may not be able to hold on to this eminent position within the minnows, as it were. But, Klusener is not going to have an easy time because these guys they're a wonderful bunch, but to bring them all together and have them work as one unit is a big task for any coach. And of course, then he was pretty confident about managing the managers of Afghanistan cricket. Yeah. But I think that might be one of his bigger problems. Not the players so much. They're a wonderful bunch.
Well, there are some fiery characters out, and there are also some very big names out in Afghanistan, Brittany. The likes of Asghar Afghan and Gulbuddin, Hamid Hassan. These are all huge players. Discipline's going to be a bit of an issue for Klusener, I would have thought. We saw some problems in the World Cup when Aftab Alam and Mohammad Shehzad were sent home. Is that going to be something you think Klusener's going to need to get a handle on?
Well, if he can bring some structure and, like you say, some sort of discipline to the side, maybe that's where he even starts. I mean, the fact that they didn't win a World Cup game, they can only go up from here, can't they? So I think if he's able to inspire them to come together as one unit and compete together, and then that will trickle onto the domestic game and hopefully inspire those to take it up and develop some good stocks for Afghanistan to come.
We wish Lance Klusener all the very best of luck with that job. Next to the first test in Visakhapatnam between India and South Africa, where India have made a dominant start with the bat, thanks to, 176 from their newly converted opener, Rohit Sharma. And that was in a partnership of 314 with Mayank Agarwal, who himself made 215. Here is Rohit speaking to the media at the end of the first day's play.
The talk was going for a long time about me opening the innings. But in West Indies, they told me clearly that it's going to happen now. So I was prepared for the past 2 years actually about, at some stage I might have to open. So mentally I was ready for it. Opening the batting in red ball cricket is a different ball game compared to limited overs. So of course it's just that mentally you have to train your mind more than anything else. Technically, yes, you got to look into it. There are certain aspects of batting where you need to look into it, but more than that, I feel mentally you got to challenge yourself as to how you're going to, manage to, play the new ball, and then take the game forward. There are a lot of things when you open the innings in red ball cricket which you have to be aware of. And those are the things I really kept in my mind when I went to bat. Very clear in my head as to what I wanted to do. So there was no confusion about how I want to approach, or is there any second thought coming to my mind. I was pretty clear in my head.
That's Rohit Sharma, a man with a definite plan. Now, none of us were here last week, but I understand there was a rather high degree of scepticism as to whether Rohit could cut it as a test opener, especially, Charu, from your stand-in, Sunil Gupta. Are you a sceptic or are you a believer?
Well, I feel sorry for Sunil. No, I'm certainly a believer because, let's go back to Stumped episodes number 12, 29, 36, 48 and 59. You know what I mean? There are any number of times that I've said Rohit Sharma is the classiest act as a batsman that India has produced in a long, long time. He is a long-form batsman. He is a batsman in a very classic style. It's just one of those strange things where he seemed to have attained all his stardom because of the white ball game. But he is the kind of batsman that can take the red ball game at the scruff of his neck and do better than anyone else around. So perhaps he didn't find his, the correct spot, as it were, batting a little later on. He opens in the other format, so why would he not open in a test match, really? Because he's got the classiest kind of, batting that we've seen in a long time. He has so much. What's his biggest asset? The fact that he has so much time. He sees the ball earlier than just about anyone else, except maybe Sachin Tendulkar. So it was just a matter of time before he found his way in test match cricket. This big 100, of course, will certainly help, but he was always the man that should have been persisted with in the Indian test match team, and somehow he just wasn't, not persisted with, and that can mess up your head a bit. So this big 100 by Rohit Sharma could really turn things around, even though he's not very young right now, but maybe for the next 5 years, he could be India's biggest red ball hero as well. And hey, big praise for Mayank Agarwal too. He's a wonderful boy from Bangalore. I've known him since he was, toddler, and I'm so glad that he's got a double because he too was sort of suffering a bit. But back to Rohit, he's a class act, always will be, and I hope this turns things around for him particularly.
He surely is, Charu, and let's not forget he's played 27 test matches already, so it's not as if he's coming in completely cold, and it's great to see that he's realising his potential at last. That's all from this week's Stumped on All India Radio. Stay in touch with us on Twitter via @BBCWS Sport using the hashtag BBC Stumped. Thanks to my co-hosts Charu Sharma and Brittany Carter, and to you for listening. Goodbye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.